For your awards consideration, Max presents the Emmy Award-nominated HBO original series True Detective Night Country. Don't miss the series Rolling Stone calls thrilling and gripping. Now streaming on Max. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of the Prestige Junkie podcast. I am Katie Rich. I am the awards editor here at The Ankler, and I am so excited to be sharing with you our first ever live Prestige Junkie podcast. Last week in Los Angeles, I was joined by a really fantastic crowd in West Hollywood to watch my conversation with three of the Emmy-nominated creatives behind the 5th season of FX's anthology series, Fargo. And now you all get to hear that conversation. I was joined by Hawley, the creator of Fargo, as well as the stars Juno Temple and Lamorne Morris. We watched some clips from their performances across the season, in which Juno Temple plays a seemingly mild-mannered Minnesota housewife, and Lamorne Morris plays the state trooper who comes to her rescue early on in the season, and then their lives become intertangled from there. It's a pretty dark and dramatic season, but we also had a really fun time talking about it, as you can imagine, with the personalities on hand. It was a great conversation, and all of them did really phenomenal work on this season. Hopefully, we'll be doing many more of these live Prestige Junkie podcasts in the future, and maybe you'll all join us for them. So for now, here are the first edition of it with my conversation with the team behind Fargo. Hi, everybody. What an amazing full room. I can almost see everybody, but this is really exciting. As you know, we have some of the incredible talent behind Fargo here to join me tonight. So I'd like to introduce Fargo's creator, Hawley. And two of the stars of Fargo Season 5, Juno Temple. Woohoo! And Lamorne Morris. It is so lovely to have all of you guys here and for you to be seeing each other again. This is kind of a reunion today, I was hearing beforehand.
I know. We've spanned the globe since we saw each other last.
Been all over.
Yeah, I've been to Cleveland.
I know.
Do you recognize each other when you're not in the snows of Calgary, going through hell and back to
Well, Juno would stay in the accent all week long, and then when I would call her on the weekend, I'd talk to this British person. It was very strange.
There were a couple of weekends there where my team checked in with me and I would wake up and not be English and still be from Minnesota, and they would be like, "Oh, hi, Dot."
Did you dream as Dot? I feel like that happens to people with languages. I wonder about accents.
I don't think I slept enough to be dreaming.
That's a fair question, too. So, knowing that everyone here has watched Fargo Season 5, we're going to get into the whole thing. And I wanted to start with you with really the beginning of it. It is set in 2019, which is a really specific period of time. All seasons of Fargo are set very specific to their times. And I think anyone who has lived through the last 5 years will kind of know what to expect from that. Why did that feel like the right period of time for you and for Fargo? Why did you feel like there was a Fargo story to tell in this era?
Well, I felt like after the first 4 installments, I was ready to engage with the movie. Like I'd earned the right to sort of have a dialogue with the movie. And the movie really coined this word Minnesota nice, right? Which is passive aggressive, smile, 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 gun, right? It's like, it's a kind of fake it, and then never let anyone know how miserable you are. And that's called society, right? Mm-hmm. We all get along whether we want to or not. But when I looked around at the school board meetings and the community meetings, no one was being Minnesota nice at all anymore. And so I thought, well, we have to engage with that idea and start with this moment where Juno's there and her daughter are just sort of talking about, should we do Under the Sea for the prom, right? And it turns into this brawl, and that allowed me to engage on the, how are we going to get past this moment?
Yeah, I should say that as we're speaking, Minnesota Nice is really having a moment with Tim Walz being the vice presidential candidate. So you feel like you really saw that coming? You predicted this Minnesota moment we're in?
All I'll say is a vote for Fargo is a vote for the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, baby.
You set that up with the DNC, right? It's all legal, very much. So you have this idea of niceness, and making a show about niceness is a really hard thing to do, and we'll talk about that. And so then you have these characters of Dot and Wit. And Juno, I know for you that you had finished filming Ted Lasso 2 or 3 days before you had to jump into this. You knew that was going to be such an immediate leap. And I know Dot's a really different character, but I was also thinking about Keely as being a bit of a tiger herself. And I wonder what that leap was for you, if you took something from Keely to bring to Dot, if you had to transform yourself, and how in the world you did it so quickly.
Well, I do think that Keely and Dot would be friends. Mm-hmm. That is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I think for me, the transition started a little earlier because I started doing dialect lessons about 6 weeks before heading to Calgary, because the Minnesota accent is not a walk in the park. And it took a minute. But when it clicks, you never want to stop doing it. And it was something that I found it. Keely was very separate. So it was a quick kind of leap of faith jump to head over there. I knew I had the accent down, but I also hadn't actually met Noah yet in person. I'd done a funny costume fitting briefly. Oh, we'd met briefly.
We met at that, yeah.
Very briefly. And I had, do you remember the diamond tennis necklace that I couldn't get off?
Right, yes.
So, for an event. And so it made everything I tried on look quite cool. And there was this panic moment of like, no, you can't look cool. I was like, it's the diamonds.
We always have that problem.
Yeah.
Wayne needs to get Dot some diamonds, though. I think that's what we've learned.
In her future.
Cubic zirconia is just as good as the diamond.
But I think the transformation really starts with the accent. You know, I think with how Noah writes these incredible speeches that all of the characters get to say, and the musical rhythm of the dialogue, it works so beautifully with the accent, and it also brings a lot of the comedy element into the Fargo-verse, you know, because obviously the story is painfully dark, but the Minnesota niceness of it is what brings a huge amount of the humor. And so I think that was an initial transformation that happened. But then when we got together, the really fun kind of weaving we had to talk about was this duality that Dot has of being this survivalist and, a wildcat that can get herself out of situations. But at the same time, she's a mother and a nurturer, truly. And so finding a way of peppering in the mother nurture side of her when she is, being more feral, or vice versa, was something we had a lot of fun with, and I think makes her a really, really interesting character to watch, these beats when you don't expect them.
Yeah, and the mothering comes out with Lamorne too at the
that was
the
the
end
first
of that
time.
First hour. Yeah, yeah.
What's interesting about that is that I could see that in you even off camera, always checking in on me, always making eye contact. And for the first time, I'm used to doing, a lot of kind of broader comedies. And so being here and working one-on-one with you, and you as well, just the amount of eye contact that people make to check in, to make sure we're still here, that even though they called cut, to make sure that we're still connected. And for me, it was nothing but a learning process, working with her, and I've been stealing that ever since, to be honest with you. And I truly have. Yeah.
Vice versa. Do you remember that we had this day where I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was around doing the gas station stuff where we were talking about, oh my gosh, Whit just completely changed Dot's world in a way that she didn't expect. And I was having a conversation of being surprised by the amount of emotional investment that you would get from a scene that you didn't expect to get from a specific character. And I think that was a real relationship burst that happened early on for us. And I think that's about, diving in with Noah is intimidating, but in the best kind of way.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to feel safe with each other.
Yeah, and you can ask me why I chose Juno, and the real reason is because she's so fun that you don't want to call Child Protective Services the way you would if you just met this woman on the street, right? Because she really endangers her entire family, especially her daughter. But she does it, for a good reason. And the thing is that I like is that she teaches her daughter to be prepared without teaching her to be afraid.
Yeah. And I think that's a really, really awesome side of her too.
Yeah. Well, we have a clip from that meeting at the Gas and Go. It's a long sequence. There's a lot going on, but let's watch a little bit of it and then we can talk about it.
Just stay calm. Backup will be here soon.
Fix your leg. Check the doors.
Clark said no back door.
There's a bathroom back there. It'll have a window.
Right, yeah. Yeah, good thinking.
Or not a long clip. A short, very.
This is a short, it's a long
very short
scene.
clip.
Yeah, that's
What
pretty short.
What I
pretty
like
short.
about that clip is something I had noticed the first time I watched it, which is Wick grabbing the stuff off of the shelf. And I feel like that's him showing a resourcefulness that we associate with Dot. Like, is that part of how you built that character? You know, he's a guy, he's a really good, decent guy, but he knows what to do with himself in a jam like this. It's an interesting aspect.
Oh, yeah, 100%. You know, the thought going into it was that it had been a while since he had seen any type of action like this. And he's the type of guy who doesn't want that. You know what I mean? He kind of...
Most of us don't, probably.
You know, he wants his solitude. But, you know, having a ton of sisters and a mom and things like that, he sees this woman that needs help and is shocked that she is, you know, when you extend the clip a little bit longer, you'll see that one, that I was crying and I had that one Denzel tear coming. You didn't see that in there. So, but also that he's shocked and surprised that she is also resourceful, even more so than he is. And so going into it, a part of me wanted to surrender to allow, you know, because even with the script, it's, you know, Dot tells him what to do. She's helping him tie the tourniquet on his leg, you know. So part of me, you know, knowing what I should do, wanted to give that up. You know what I mean? She happens to be in that aisle. The things they happen to be there, and so Whit, you know,
he knows.
Just pop back in his brain. Let's get busy. Yeah.
Yeah. So Noah, you directed this episode. It's that sequence at the Gas and Go is really long, extensive. There's so much going on. You see Dot turning bags of ice into weapons, which is something I never would have imagined. I mean, just what was it like jumping into the season like that?
It was great. I really wanted, you know, this year to be lean and really tight episodes. Tell you the story. Don't mess around with a lot of navel gazing. You know, that sequence was so huge that we found an old airfield. We built the Gas and Go there, so we had total control over everything. We did about a night and a half of the roadside pullover work. It was very cold. Juno saw some northern lights. She thought that was cool.
We all did. The production shut off the lights for us all. It was incredible.
I didn't see it.
No.
I'm not sure where I was, but I was.
You were crouched down behind a police car, trying not to die. And then we went inside and we had this whole sequence in which, you know, a lot of interconnected action, a lot of stunts and breaking glass and all those things that you have to be safe about. But the humor has to come through as well. And, you know, that poor Donnie in the bathroom and the bag of ice in the face and I just really wanted to show how resourceful and clever a problem solver that she was. And, you know, at the end of it, she's just destroyed these two guys. It's very rewarding.
Is it rewarding for you, Juno, to destroy these guys?
Oh, hell yeah. I also learned, do you remember Mitch, our camera operator, told me that he thought I ran faster than Tom Cruise.
Yes, he has filmed a lot of Spielberg movies, so it's a compliment.
I bolted.
I'll tell you, there was a moment I remember, I'm from Chicago, so the cold is not a big deal to me. However, this was a little bit different, and having to work in that environment is a little strange. And I just remember being bundled up, and prior to doing that, having a talk with wardrobe about heating pads and things like that, and I just remember doing this scene where I'm running and didn't know that in that same shot we were going to see Dot running, and she's barefoot and she's just wearing a cardigan, maybe, I think, and pajamas, and even in between takes sometimes she would just be standing there talking without a warming jacket. And I'm sitting there like this. Yeah. So you want me to run faster, you said? Okay. And she's just hanging out and chilling. You know what I mean? So that I did find to be very, very impressive.
Was that a power move, just to show them what you're made of?
No, it was an adrenaline thing. And I did have those toe shoes. Do you remember they spray painted them skin color? And they started to crack. It was really nasty. But I think also the beautiful thing about that sequence too was this element of comedy, this element of mayhem and all the resourcefulness. But then there were these moments where everything slowed down. The Bisquick advert, the moment in the newspaper and needing to get back to Scotty, the moment with the tourniquet, the moment, these, and I think that the way that sequence moved is truly extraordinary and was so brilliant to be a part of as an actor, because there was an element of it that felt like a dance.
Yeah.
And it was really, it really got your heart pumping in a way where you can't fake that, you know? But then when the moments of pause happened, you were allowed to process what your character was going through, but also what you just shot, and have these kind of moments of stillness where you really were thinking about things that were happening.
Yeah. You know, film's the only medium where you have control over time, right? And you can slow things down or speed them up. And so you build out these moments that if you just shot them in real time, they would go by without noticing them. But you want the moment of Lamorne, you know, seeing his life flash before his eyes, or Juno having the idea, or as he's rising up to shoot, you know, he's in maximum danger. You're slowing it down so the audience is willing him to go faster. And you know, that was part of the excitement of making that sequence also.
One of the moments filming this show that I realized, this is the first time I realized, oh, I'm dealing with a completely different set of creators here that I've ever worked with before. We were doing the scene, and I remember you gave me a note about how to rise and you know, where the action was going to be when I pop up. And I remember Mitch, camera operator, whispering in my ear, he goes, now when you come up, I'm going to be right here. So if you want, kind of cheat a little bit. And he goes, it's going to look really cool. And I said, my God, everyone's on the same page. You can see Noah conducting an orchestra where he's talking to actors, he's talking to lighting, camera, you know, all these things, and completely maneuvering this scene in a way where you might not have seen it, you know, and it was just a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah. So we learn a lot about Dot in this scene, but I think we really learn a lot about her in episode 2 in this scene at the kitchen table with her mother-in-law, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh. So let's watch that clip before we talk about it.
Listen, bitch. I've climbed through 6 kinds of hell to get where I am. And no Ivy League royal wannabe is gonna run me off just because she doesn't like the way I smell. If you want to tussle with me, you better sleep with both eyes open. Because nobody takes what's mine and lives. Anywho, thanks for stopping by. Dinner Sunday?
Damn.
I've never heard so much laughter over such tense music.
Yeah.
So, Juno, that accent, that version of Dot, it's such a revelation in that episode. What is that accent? What is that layer you peeled off?
Well, that was that's not entirely me. That's Noah and me together. Of it being a flash into a person that Dot has as a part of her that we meet later, right? It's her past. And it was something that in the script, it said that there was going to be a sort of shift in the accent. And so I remember us talking about it. What does that mean? So kind of going with the more standardized American accent, but then thinking it was really important that we found another place for it. So it wasn't just this one moment, which we found the place for it in episode 8 with Gator. And they feel like these 2 moments where she's being threatened in a way that it is not a simple scenario to get herself out of. It's almost like being pinned in a way where action isn't going to get her out of this. So this snippet of this survivalist that is Nadine comes out, and it's scary. And I think, you know, getting to do a scene like this with the extraordinary Jennifer Jason Leigh, it was a pinch me moment for sure, directed by Noah Hawley. And I remember when we were doing this, we did it a few different ways. And then there was this take where you came out, and you gave me such a brilliant note. Do you remember it?
Well, I told you to look upstairs, make sure that you were alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scotty couldn't hear you.
Yes. And there was also that it was like, don't get emotional with it. Don't get make it really just purely frightening. Like, we have no idea who this person is for a second. And so it's shocking in so many ways because she is a mother and her daughter is in the house, and, you know, she's married to a heavenly husband. And, but also playing kind of with the 2 wildcats that are in this chapter, which is, you know, Mrs. Lorraine Lyon and Dot. And, you know, working with Jennifer, the first night we shot with her, I remember just watching her do her thing and thinking, wow, this feline creation she's putting out there. It was like she was looking at all of us, hunting us, kind of stalking us, and debating whether we were good enough to eat or not. And then it was amazing. And then realizing that the only way to stand up to that is by being another wild cat, right? And that obviously plays into the whole installment that this Fargo 5 is. But yeah, that was an amazing scene. And it was another scene too where you just got to watch the performance in front of you as well, and that fed your performance and vice versa. And it was intimate, but it was really electric.
Yeah. Well, because you also don't know what Lorraine is going to do and her response. And she is surprised. She's almost never surprised in life, and she's surprised in that moment. But then she comes back very coolly, gets some sun deer, you look like a corpse, and just walks out in her fur coat. And it was a great pairing.
Well, you've got Jennifer Jason Leigh and also John Hamm, who we'll talk more about in a moment, playing these, to call them evil characters is really basic, but I think that's where we're supposed to start with them. They're these two representations of power and ruthless people, and we see them go head to head. And I feel like that ties really neatly into the way this season handles the idea of good versus evil and complicates it, but also doesn't. There are good people and there are bad people, and there are shades of them. So just in creating the season, why did those two characters, Lorraine and Roy Tillman, feel like the poles of the bad side to put in there, and putting them next to Juno and Lamorne's characters kind of make that balance work?
Well, there was a sense for me that all the characters in this season of Fargo were some version of a Republican, right? That and I'm not saying the current guy, but the history of that party, et cetera, and that even Whit might have been like, look, I'm not with them on everything, but I do think that, tax cuts and that sort of stuff, and Dot and Wayne, they're sort of like tailgate Republicans because mom votes that way or whatever. But that Lorraine represents this old school big money Koch brothers thing, and that John represents this other thing, right? And that there is this, head to head between these two sides who are more closely aligned than you would think. And I think early on you might feel that the power dynamic is in John's favor, but the reality is the Lorraine Lyons of the world, they always hire the Sheriff Tillmans of the world. It's never the other way around, right? So, it was a different way of looking at the show.
For your awards consideration, Max presents the Emmy Award-nominated HBO original series True Detective Night Country. Don't miss the series Rolling Stone calls thrilling and gripping, now streaming on Max. Yeah, so we have a long clip to show that kind of brings in John Hamm's character and you guys in this really tense, I guess calling it a standoff really isn't overstating it. It's a standoff in a hospital. So let's watch that and then we'll talk some more about it.
Mrs. Lyon. Everything all right?
She's fine.
Mm-hmm. Just took a spill is all. Finishing up some paperwork and then...
Heading home. Right? How we doing there, Kim?
Back to Minnesota, you're saying?
Oh, Nadine's gonna spend some time with us here now.
That's your idea? Because I can drive you home. My shift's over.
We should go.
Mrs. Lyon, Dorothy, I can help.
Son, the lady said it's no concern to you.
I heard her. But see, I was drawn into a chain of events last time Mrs. Lyon was kidnapped.
Kidnapped?
That never happened.
Oh.
See, son, I'm the sheriff in this county. Oh, I know you're not sitting here telling me I'm a suspect in some imaginary crime, so move out of my way before I move you.
Listen to me. You don't have to go with him. I could have backup here in 10 minutes.
Well, that's gonna be too late.
Surprise.
This is all just a bit of silliness. I'm fine, really. Thank you for your kind offer. Go home, please. Tell Wayne I'll be there soon.
Time to go, Jay-Z. Don't touch me.
Ooh, he's sensitive. Careful, boys. I think Officer Nightstick's on his period today.
Roy. If you hurt him, I won't come.
We're leaving.
No. Man, Gator really has some stupid lines in that scene. I was really appreciative of all the things he can say.
And his vape.
I look nothing like Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Of all the things. So that scene is genuinely scary, and I'm very worried for Whit. And I think there's this interesting, he's trying to be really brave for Dot, knowing that, there's this debt he owes her. I think that's the theme of the whole season. But there's real fear there, too. So just, Lamorne, what did you bring into that? What did you feel through filming that?
I mean, he is up against danger. However, in the back of his mind, he knows that he is equipped to kind of handle himself. He's also in public, so there is a little bit of that safety net there. But definitely throughout the show, having these encounters, having this be visually the first time we see Whit with Roy. Mm-hmm. That interaction there is a bit more frightening than it is with Gator, because Gator is a boy to me, and I've had an encounter with him before, and I now know his type, so he's able to handle himself. So I brought a little bit of that, to that scene, and also again, it goes back to the initial meeting that we had, where there is this motherly warmth that you feel when you see her, and there's a little bit of that in there as well, because even though I know she's being taken against her will, part of me knows that she'll be fine because she is a survivalist, and I've seen her do this before. And, in the future, I'm telling myself I can handle this, and we're going to figure this out.
Yeah. And, there's so much going on in your eyes here of just like trying to get him away, trying not to say anything, just, navigating 8 sides of that interaction. So, just what was your perspective on filming that?
It kind of felt like I was trying to shine with you. Am I trying so hard? Do you read me? But also, knowing that she knows Roy better than anybody in that room right there until Gator walks in. And still, she knows him in a very different way to Gator and is aware of sides of Roy that I think even if Gator was aware of them, he pretends that he's not. And she also knows that she has a little bit of power there too, and that's why I think it's really, it was a really kind of great journey, because I think she's caught off guard when Whit walks in. And I think she's thrown off guard that Whit walks in and wants to be there for her. And in doing that, she knows obviously that he's putting himself in danger. But at the same time, if she owns up to the fact that she is who Whit's saying she is, someone might get smacked or shot. Mm-hmm. So it's about having to really kind of navigate a sequence of boys and men being twats and having to do it.
The men part she was talking about. She was saying Gator was a boy, Whit was a man.
Yes, absolutely.
But also doing, having to navigate a situation without wanting to rub any of them the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And I love the beat when I remember us figuring out the choreography of that too, of being able to whisper to you, and say to Wayne that I'll be home soon.
You know what's cool about that? Again, it goes back to day one when we were working together. Off camera, she would lock eyes with me. And in this scene, which we shot much later down the line, we had even when you're paying attention to the scene, it's almost like we're communicating. She's letting me know it's going to be okay. Trust me, everything's going to be fine. And that's the same intense stare that I was getting on day one,
Yeah, I mean, I think Dot does a lot of talking with her eyes. I really do. Sometimes in a way that I think she wishes she could turn off. But.
Yeah, one of my favorite things as a filmmaker is when an actor has to show one thing to the audience and another thing to the scene partner. It's like, you got to show Roy that you're not afraid, but we have to see that you're afraid, right? You have to show vulnerability to us, but not to him. And you know, I think this scene is really strong on that level. There's a lot of, you know, just the unspoken stuff before this with the receptionist, and you write a note, help me, and
Also my outfit.
Yeah.
You know, I've been put in a prairie dress and a headband and all that, and it's like,
yeah,
what the fuck?
You're like a sister. It's like sister wife. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a show with a killer who may or may not be immortal wandering the earth. We might get to him at the end of the conversation. But I do think that John Hamm's Roy Tillman is the scariest character on the show and maybe in all of Fargo. And you'd have to take him really seriously, even though there's all this kind of ridiculous pageantry around him, which we get to later in the season with the militia arriving and the YMCA playing. And like, I mean, I kind of want to ask about that sequence in general, but just like, how did you
Trump's favorite song.
Yeah, it's at every rally.
Plays it at every rally.
Why did he have to be as scary as he is to make the season work and to make these interactions work?
Well, here's what I've found is that the villains are often the most exciting characters, and people like them. And I knew that for a certain part of our nation, there were people who were going to feel like Roy was the protagonist of the show, right? I agree with everything he's saying. I agree with the way he's living his life. And so you need to push them to go, all right, well, you're okay with that, but are you okay with this, right? He just literally shot that guy in the face. You know, are you still good with that? You know, and he's Bible quotes and swinging a chain.
With that line, then why are you so dead?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're so smart. So that's why. And John he's not a process actor. He doesn't want to talk about this stuff a lot. You know, we had a dinner before. He's like, I think I got something for The Voice. I said, great. I was like, do you want to talk? He's like, no, I'm good. And, you know, he's like, I'll do a thing. And if you have a thought, say it. But, you know, it builds. The pressure on Roy builds. The ability to believe that he is untouchable erodes. And the more it erodes, the more dangerous he becomes until, you know, that long walk that he takes where we just stay on him the whole time, where he's coming to kill you, basically. And you see that there's no turning back for him from this moment.
Yeah, we get to those final 2 episodes and the intensity just ratchets up over and over again. And Juno, there's so much physical stuff for you as you're kind of chained up and trying to escape this space and climbing and falling and hauling a chain around, which I'm guessing wasn't as heavy in real life as it looks. Maybe it was. Just what was that like for you? Just
What I'm going to say is I did keep it.
You got to keep that
I
shit.
got to keep the chain.
You didn't keep your
I
hat?
had to be put in and out of it all the time.
Oh, okay. I kept my badge. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Nice.
You should.
Yeah.
So Juno, what does that emotional toll take on you going through like real hell as Dot in those scenes?
It's a version of hell, but it's a version of hell that she wants to survive, right? So there's an optimism in all of it. She's done it before and she's going to do it again. And throughout that sequence, she's given these golden nuggets of hope, whether it's a Whit Farr beat, whether it's Dave Foley,
Yeah, Danish. Great.
Danish, thank you, Danish.
Maybe the best name on the show. I don't know. There's a lot of competition.
Yeah, sorry,
but
that
Danish
was a
Grey is a
stupid
good
brain
one.
fart. But, you know, and then also the phone call that she gets from Lorraine, which that when we shot that was the first time I'd ever heard it, Jennifer's side of it, and that was truly emotional for me. You know, she's given these moments of hope intercut with the thought of her daughter and the thought of her husband and the reason to get home. Because last time she got away, there wasn't that reason, you know. But she's also learning that she is not remembering everything correctly and that certain people that she thought are still around are not. And so I think that was the first time we really talked about where she has a moment of really losing hope for a beat when she realizes that Linda's no longer there. And I think it was an emotional roller coaster that how can it not affect you when you're filming that, you know? As we talked about from the get-go, what happens in situations like this in domestic violence is either you get away or you don't, and it ends badly. And I think it's really important to not make light of that and understand what the stakes are and really go for it. And I think as an actor, it's important to feel all of those things. And certainly there were some days that I got home and I would have a panic attack, you know, processing things. But also, you know, we really took care of each other throughout this whole, you know, last few episodes, which were hard to film. They were brutal, as they should be. But we had a set that was closed, and we had a situation where people that didn't want to come to work that day didn't have to, because you know what? You don't want to create new trauma for people. You really don't. And in playing a character like Dot, who has experienced that kind of a journey, it is truly shocking and heartbreaking how many people around you, and this is just on a set, who have experienced their own version of domestic violence and who open up to you about things, and you feel so protective of each other. I mean, it's truly a family that you're stepping into when you join Fargo, and it's one that I am so grateful that you asked me to join. It's just been a gift that keeps on giving, and to this day, one of the probably greatest experience I will ever have. But we really did take care of each other, and I think I felt really safe, and I knew that if I wasn't okay, I could put my hand up and say it and nobody would judge me. And that meant I didn't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no, Fargo gets dark, but I've heard people say this is the darkest season of Fargo, and I wonder if you agree with that, if what you're watching Dot go through and what Juno's talking about really takes it to a different level than it had been before.
Well, it's the challenge of the show, right? Given its comedic underpinnings and what you can do tone-wise. You know, you can't go all the way to farce, and you shouldn't be able to go all the way to the dark side, which is why when we finally tell the story of her abuse, we do it as a puppet show. Yeah. You know, we have to find ways to make those darker parts watchable for an audience.
While still being honest.
Yeah, and you just have to be really sensitive to the audience. When Roy walks, he takes that long walk and he goes into the cabin and he beats her. We don't go in with him. We stay outside. And then we go in when it's a fight, right? Because we see that. We watch the fight. We don't watch the abuse because we know what's happening in there. You don't need to see it. And, you know, so much of this season is about trauma and facing trauma. But I think the darkness of it is part of the catharsis of it, right? Which is that every season of Fargo, the worst person in the show says, "I'm the victim here," right? And starting with Bill Macy, Fargo is based on characters who are in so much denial that it destroys the lives of everyone around them, right? And Martin Freeman and Kirsten Dunst and Ewan McGregor and you know, here's Juno, and she's fallen into the same pattern, right? Where I was never kidnapped. Those guys aren't in our home trying to kill us, right? But the only way that she and her family were going to survive is if she was going to face that trauma and stop living in denial. And that's what Linda World was, and that's what she did. And that's what allowed her in the last 2 hours to have a happy ending.
Yeah. Yeah, so we get these showdowns at the Tillman Ranch. Dot gets her chance to put a gun on Roy, but doesn't finish the job, and then it leads us to a very sad scene with Whit that we're going to watch a clip of and then talk about it. I know, prepare yourself for more. I'm sorry.
We're so sorry.
You wrote it.
Let's take a look.
I'm still sorry.
There it is. Don't fight it, son. It's all over now.
I know.
Your
Spoiler.
eyes in that scene too, motherfucker. Yeah.
It hurts every time.
Anybody got any alcohol? Pour some out.
Yeah.
Lamorne, I think you said this is the first time you've ever died on screen.
First time, yeah.
I remember us talking about that.
Yeah, it was strange. It was a strange one. Was it?
Your mom must have been thrilled.
A lot of my friends called me and they were like, "What the F? Like, dude, why'd you die?"
That's not fair.
It was in the script. So there was a lot of heartbreak from fans, from friends, family. Some of my family members, which is interesting. I've been doing this for a long time. You know, sometimes they think it's real. And they take it so seriously with such weight, but I think that's a part of the storytelling here, which was so heavy. And Yeah, I did the same, but I feel it when I watch it.
Yeah.
It's still a strange thing. I remember having a conversation with this guy, Phil Narmada. He's former SEAL Team 6. He was the one who was teaching me how to use weapons and things like that. And I called him one day and I said, before the scene, I said, I hate to ask this question, but what does it look like when you kill somebody?
Wow.
Like, what do they look like? And he goes, it's always the same. It's almost like they check out and they go somewhere else completely. Like they're looking, sometimes they're laughing, sometimes they're happy. It's almost like they're in a completely different location. He's like, that's what he sees often. And so I remember shooting the scene, trying it a few different ways. And it's hard to be somewhere else when you've got a bloody-mouthed John Hamm. Just, in your face like that. So definitely a difficult scene to shoot for me. But it was one of the last scenes that I shot. So it was almost, I want to say it was the last scene. After that, I was done with the show. And I don't know, it felt good to watch, but it also feels very, very heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at that episode and the way that it's cut, Juno shoots John, and then when she isn't able to finish him, I thought about playing it as suspense. What's going to happen? And then I thought, well, the moment that he gets away, something terrible is going to happen, right? So let's play it as tragedy. We know that something tragic is going to happen when he says, I've got it. Nobody in the audience is like, oh, he'll be fine. Everyone's like, oh no, that
Dark
guy.
Tunnel looks fine.
And so it allowed us, I think, to play Lamorne out of the show with the dignity of not making it a surprise, right? Because as a storyteller, you have surprise or suspense, and we chose to allow it to be a sort of inevitable thing that something tragic was going to happen.
So interesting about John Hamm. You talked about his process of not wanting to do the thing, but I remember it's such a brutal scene and he's such a menacing character. In between takes, he's just telling jokes. He's very light. And it's such
With blood all over his face. Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, John, relax. I got to go die, man.
I remember just before that moment, it was when you first arrive on the porch and we had that beat where you tried to take me away and I struggle and we'd done a bunch of takes of it, different sizes, and it was about to be my close-up, and we cut and we went to the green room, and I somehow had either kneed myself in the face or hit myself on your weapon. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, do you remember, we were in the green room hanging out, chilling, we went back to shoot my close-up, and my entire mouth had swollen, and it was so cold, I hadn't noticed. And I remember my guardian angels, Danny and Chris, the makeup and hair, were like, oh shit. What did you do?
I was so confused.
Yeah, it was
what
crazy.
happened to your face?
I remember that. I just forgot that. I've just remembered it. That was crazy. So it was my own doing.
This is the end of What's Character we just watched, but Dot goes on to make biscuits for an undead killer and solve him at the very end. I love the ending of this so much. It's so completely unexpected. I love the comedy of this killer monk wandering into Dot's house and, Dot's persistence, these like intense eyes that we've seen in the entire thing saying, no, come take this and eat this. And when you realize that was how Dot's character would end, how did that feel for you, Juno, to send the character off in that way?
Like perfection.
Yeah.
Because I think what we talked about from the get-go, that this motherly, nurturing, blossoming orchard that she has inside of her was always going to win. And so when she comes home with Scotty, after just having visited Whit's grave, actually. And
why you bring that back up?
And she walks in there and there he is. She also knows, there's an unspoken language between the two of them where they're kind of a match. They kind of know that it's going to be a tussle for real, that you never know who's going to walk away with who's ear next time. But at the same time, she truly means it when she's saying, it's a school night and I have to make dinner for my daughter and she's got to go to bed on time. So if you want to do this, you either come back and do it or you sit down, you join dinner with us. And she's not fucking about with that. And that was a beat that I loved so much. And anytime he tries to go real dark, Scotty will jump in or Wayne will offer him something. And it's like they're not allowing the darkness into their home because that's not what their home is. Mm-hmm. And so the beauty of this family that really love each other and really enjoy being with each other, inviting this person to stay is saying like, it's cool to be a part of a family. And what families do is we forgive each other.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? Well, you've all seen this episode, right?
We hope so.
I wasn't there on the day, obviously, but because I was dead. That's one of the greatest. That's one of the greatest scenes I've ever witnessed on screen. Period. And I was surprised because you read it and it's like, oh, this is awesome. But when you watch it, you're like, this might be the greatest thing I've ever seen.
That smile when he gets the biscuit at the end. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, when I sat down to write that sequence, I didn't have a plan for it. There was a scene in No Country for Old Men where Kelly MacDonald comes back to her house after her mother's funeral, and Shigura is sitting in the room, and she says, I knew this wasn't over. And I thought, oh, well, there's something interesting in an echo of that scene here. And I guess I had in my head that maybe this was, you thought the show was over, but there's one last nail-biting sequence. And then I thought, well, that's his scene. But what if she refuses to be in his scene? What if she's like, no, you're going to be in my scene. And in my scene, it's dinner time. So wash your hands. And then, she just refuses to indulge him. She's like, you took a job that had risk and you got hurt and you can't be mad at the risk. And she just walks him through it all the way to the dining room and then, shows him that there is something on the other side of animosity and rivalry and polarization and, which is ultimately forgiveness.
Yeah. Makes you want a biscuit, too, I feel like.
Exactly.
I heard that Bisquick did Fargo, a limited edition Fargo Bisquick.
They did. They made a box.
Guys, that's cool.
They didn't send you one?
They sent one to me.
Did you?
Yeah, they did. Now, personally, I thought I was going to get a Kia full of Bisquick. But I just got the one empty box, I should say.
I want an empty box and I want to put it in one of those lucite frames.
Oh, yeah. All right. We'll have to work on that for you guys. Well, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for making Fargo. Thank you all for being here.
Thank
and
you all.
Congratulations on your Emmy nominations,
Thank you so much.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. That does it for this special edition of the podcast. The show is edited by Brett Fuchs and co-produced by Brett Fuchs and me. Our theme music is by Dave Gonzalez. Thanks to Noah Hawley, Juno Temple, and Lamorne Morris, as well as everyone at FX and the London Hotel for making this live event possible. Get the Prestige Junkie newsletter by going to theankler.com and subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We will see you next week. For your awards consideration, Max presents the Emmy Award-nominated HBO original series True Detective Night Country. Don't miss the series Rolling Stone calls thrilling and gripping, now streaming on Max.